Ah! Where the hell am I? What's going on? Ah, Business Brad. I see you're here too.
Hey there, this is Business Brad.
Well, this is quite the predicament. Oh, what's this? Let's see here. I need my reading glasses here for a moment. Hold on. All right. Are you addicted to art? Can't seem to kick the habit? Well, then you should join us on Art Anonymous. Oh, wait, that's me. And also the name of a podcast. Not sure what that is. Where a digital and traditional sculptor talk about art, the meaning of life, and everything in between. Not really sure what's going on here, but it says here our AA meetings will be sure to aid you in your artistic quest. So there's some kind of quest going on here, I guess. Let's see. This week we accidentally used the power of our words to form two new beings into existence. Brad, is that talking about us? Oh yes, I guess it is. It says Art Anonymous, the great and all-powerful art wizard. Yes, thank you. And Business Brad. Listen to this, Brad. It says, that dirty fiend constantly reminding you to do your taxes, and then after that it just says, ew, gross. They will be spending their time floating in the endless void between realms. But don't worry, we gave them some copy to read so that they don't get too bored. Wow. Well, thanks for that, I guess, but, I'm not really sure how we got pulled into this realm. You say the power of your words, but no mere mortal could do that with the power of their words. And Brad, we're gonna have to find a way to get out of here. Well, at least I will. I'm the all-powerful art wizard, and I'm sure I can figure something out. So, let's see. Try a couple spells, I guess. Alright, here we go. 1, 2, skadoo! Alakadabradity! A lot of people mess that one up. Doesn't really seem to be working. Well, I guess I'll keep practicing and figure it out here eventually. Can't be stuck in this realm forever. Right?
Welcome back to, what is it? AA?
Oh, yeah, it's AA.
Welcome back to AA, everybody.
Wow, this is off to a great start.
Cut. Welcome back to AA, everybody. My name's Daryl. I'm a ceramic artist, and joining me is Ben.
What's up? I'm the digital artist.
He's a digital artist, also known as Follygon. Today's artist prompt, Ben. Give me a Thanksgiving-related word.
Oh gosh. Okay. And I want from you a video game character.
A video game character. Ooh, very specific. Okay.
All right, you ready?
Yep. 1, 2, 3.
Stuffing.
Ryu stuffing.
Ryu stuffing? How's that work though?
I don't know. Maybe
Is he like Hadokening stuffing?
Stuffing. That's a good one. I just imagine him like
he's made of stuffing?
like his punch sequence,
Yeah.
the frame sequence of him just like shoving,
Or maybe
punching
yeah,
stuffing
maybe he's
into a
just
turkey.
fighting a turkey.
Oh yeah, he could be fighting a turkey.
Capcom versus turkey. Capcom versus Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you could have like little blob monsters of stuffing and cranberry sauce. All right.
Let's go take a break real quick. I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop this recording, go eat some food,
Yeah.
and be right back.
We're gonna go enjoy our Thanksgiving dinner. No, it's AA. It's AA time.
Yeah.
You're back to Artist Anonymous. Or Art Anonymous.
Art Anonymous. We decided so it's kind of like the Holy Spirit. I decided, where two or more gather, the Art Anonymous is present. So Art Anonymous, the great invisible wizard, is here among us right now.
Yes,
And
perfect.
He is our Holy Spirit to guide us on our artistic journey.
That's
the great Art Anonymous.
That's awesome. We need to make an Art Anonymous and 3D model him and rig him and have some dope animation.
I want one Art Anonymous guy on my right shoulder, and who's Art Anonymous's arch nemesis?
business Brad. I don't know.
Business
Some sort of fucking like
yes, Business
auditor.
Brad is so fucking good.
Some sort of auditing
Oh
person.
my god, Art Anonymous and Business Brad. That's so great. Oh, I love it. Okay, I'm picturing them both. You know, one on each shoulder.
Yeah.
Art Anonymous is like, that's a very good. That's a very good art you're doing there, Ben. And Business Brad is like, yeah, but how are you gonna sell that?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
like, oh, Business Brad, that hurts.
Yeah,
that
he's
hurts
like-
my soul.
He's like, well, here's the tax forms for your 1087. Like, fuck off, business Brad. I'm trying to... You gotta really think about this stuff. Your 401k.
I think you should get an LLC. I'm
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
No, I'm just one person. I'm fine. Leave me alone, Business Brad.
Yeah. Just tortures you with, like, really sound business advice.
That's awesome. I love that.
Okay, so today's episode we decided would be about conceptual stuff. We had some feedback from you guys, you AA members, and it seemed as though a common theme in some of the questions, not all of them, but some of them seemed to be about conceptual work and how to represent that. And I have a very different take on it, probably from most digital artists, just because I went to school for art and like learned more traditionally the.
Can you go ahead and explain what you mean by like more conceptual work as well?
Mm-hmm. So conceptual work, what that means to me is the idea which is being related through the work. So how the work, what message the work is saying, and it's not always, in most cases, very usually, is not just from what the surface of the artwork is telling you, but there's a lot of like metaphors or.
So it's the chair in the big empty room.
Yeah, exactly. The chair in the big empty room. Now, I do not like
Orphans, I think is what you said.
Yeah, yeah, orphans?
Yeah, you said the message here is orphans.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the message was orphans, yeah. Yeah, no, I really don't like conceptual work that has no guiding line, no, like, real way in which it's trying to get something out into the public. And so, like that's a perfect example. Like, just a chair in a room when you're in a gallery, and, like, that's the whole exhibit.
There's a very, very thin line connecting those two things together, and 99.9% of the people don't see it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, and anything you say in that situation can be right. And I do think, like, that's an important thing, to leave your art open to interpretation. But I think there is such a thing as opening it too much, to where your art doesn't mean anything. It's just people walking into the room, projecting onto it, and then calling it great because you didn't actually think of anything. And there's a whole group of artists that don't have any conceptual work, that a lot of people put a lot of concept in, like Andy Warhol. He wasn't conceptual at all. He was a pop artist. He just did screen prints and sold them and made money, and he didn't even make them. But a lot of people made conceptual links to his work which really weren't there.
They projected and pulled their own meaning from things, which is kind of the art that we talked about previously that neither one of us particularly cares for a lot of the time.
Yeah. But that being said, you do, I think, especially in traditional work, traditional fine art, you do need to express conceptual themes to a certain level. And the more conceptual your work is, I think the less you need in craft. But I think the strongest work has really high craft and really good concept, good sound concept. It has a nice strong line saying this is what this is. And it also has a lot of subtle layers underneath it that when you dig into, you can realize, oh, like, everything was done intentionally, and everything was done to say this very specific thing, and you can get, like, a message right away, but then as you look at it longer and think about it longer and just question what everything was about, then you start unwrapping the deeper and deeper meanings behind the work. And that's something that I think really strong work needs. Unless you're going purely aesthetic. And I think that's the disconnect between fine art and digital sculpting and digital artists, is that a lot of the time they're just sort of making, a lot of times I see a lot of work that is just like, I really wanted to make this character, and that is still art. I still think that's art, but it's just art in a different way. It's
a lot of digital art is either for production. Most digital art, so specifically 3D in this case, is either for film, for game, or for sculpt, specifically for like print or resin casting for down the road, or whatever you're making it for. It typically falls into those three categories. And if it's just personal work of a project, it still typically falls in line with one of those three as being your kind of goal towards that, one of those three that it would fall into. And it's very rare that you would just create something to have that conceptual, well, I shouldn't say very rare, but the vast majority seems to be that most things in the digital realm are for production instead of conceptual.
Yeah, which is interesting. And there's, as somebody who also makes sculpture and sculptural work to be shown in a gallery, viewed in a gallery, I also make production work as well, which I think is just purely aesthetic, which is my pottery. I love making pottery, and I don't have any conceptual ideas behind it. I just have an aesthetic of which I wish to show to people, and there's a high value in that as well. There's sort of super high value in aesthetic, and some people blur the line. Some people say that's not art, or that is art, or anything that's just aesthetic isn't art, and anything that's just conceptual is just stupid. You have a lot of artists that disagree on that.
Right.
I think, and at the end of the day, if it's special, well, we already talked about that. What makes art art.
Yeah. we already know what art is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we already know. It's at the top of the pyramid. It's super important. Illuminati. But conceptual stuff, and I think one of the questions, and I don't know if you want to read the one. There's a storytelling question.
Yeah. One question, not from Art Anonymous himself, but maybe the spirit imbued this person when they asked the question.
Ethos. Yes,
the ethos unto logos.
Yeah.
Said, how do you integrate storytelling into your art?
Yeah, and that's essentially what a concept is. That's a different way of saying a concept, right? So I'm now working on a show titled Disorder.
Coming up soon, too.
It's coming up soon.
Just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I'm excited to go check it out.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I hope you can be there. Hope you can be there for my talk, because it's going to go terribly. I hate...
Just picture everyone in their underwear.
Yeah, I hate talking in public. I have horrible anxiety problems.
But the trick is, you don't talk to the mob. You talk to people in the group.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you're talking to me right now.
Yeah, that's what
you're talking to me, and you're only mildly sweating.
Yeah, just drenched. That's all. No puddle has accumulated yet. Storytelling through artwork, and in the fine art sense, I think you could just call that concept. With my show, there's a underlying concept, and my concept is, I want to reveal what depression is. I want to take this abstract concept of depression, and I want to realize it in a visual format. And I want to do that because I want to create an experience that the viewer can have with the artwork, so that they can better understand on an emotional level what depression really is. And the reason I want to do that is because I think, especially with emotions, you really rely on a conversation when you're talking about your emotions, on the other person having experienced it. So you can say, I was really happy, or I was sad, or I was angry, and what you're relying on there is the other person to understand what angry, happy, sad is. And I think the disconnect for a lot of people is when you say, I am depressed, they don't understand what that is. And it's very hard to articulate in words what depression feels like. We can, and people do when they try, and you can look up the definition online, but it's just like this vague sentence. Just a feeling of worthlessness.
Right. And you can tell someone what happiness is, but until they actually experience it, it's a little hard. It sounds kind of similar of what you're describing here, is kind of like trying to describe color to a blind person.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, red's kind of warm, but not always. Sometimes fire can be blue. I don't know. It's just something you got to experience.
Yeah.
I think there's different levels to depression, but I think from the work that I've seen that you're trying to express is a very particular emotion, and I think people will definitely kind of get that feeling from viewing your work, from what I've seen.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and that's the major theme, right? That's the story that I'm trying to tell. But there's many other parts of the story which I'm trying to elaborate on, and more subtle ways. Some obvious ways, but the thing that I'm talking about is subtle. So when you're telling a story through artwork, I think it's always important to consider every single aspect that you're doing, and everything that you're doing, and why you're doing it. How how the placement of an object of your artwork is in relation to other objects is going to affect how the story is read, how it's lighted, how it's not lighted. The complete, you put something in there and then you take it out. Every little decision changes how the story is read. So for instance, while I'm trying to get across depression, I'm also trying to get across this other subtle theme of separating depression from an individual. The theme that, like, people that suffer depression or go through depressive states or episodes, they often identify as the depression. So they often believe that the depression is part of them, and in actuality it's really just a disorder or a disease that is affecting them. And that can be dangerous, because as soon as you start to believe that you are this thing, then you identify with it, and then it's kind of like your identity.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy,
Yeah.
in a way. Yeah, there's a lot of weird psychological theories about your body being the car with which multiple personalities are being the drivers inside, kind of taking the wheel. And there's some references to, like, and I'm talking out of my butt from multiple years back when I took a couple psych classes and just my own personal, somewhat recent research into some of this stuff online, but getting into the idea of how you feel different on certain days.
Yeah.
I think everybody can kind of
Definitely.
vouch for that, where, you're... I don't know if I'm extroverted or introverted, because, some days I am extroverted, but another day, I just want to stay in bed and watch Netflix all day and not talk to anybody.
Exactly, and that's what makes another, like, this topic so tricky. To separate that work, like I was saying, separate the idea of the depression is you, or the depression is something that's affecting you. So, like, how do you tell that story? And that's like a more subtle concept, and I do it very obviously. So, like, one of my figures is white. Is like pure white, not like a race thing, but is colored the color white. And then this other figure
Daryl's favorite color.
Yeah. The other figure is black. And it's a matte black.
My favorite color.
Black.
Actually, pretty much everything I own is black.
Yeah, same here. I'm wearing a white shirt, but I always wear black pants. But it's a matte black versus a white semi-gloss glaze. And what I'm trying to, like, that's a very obvious disconnect, of very contrasting colors. And by doing that, what I'm trying to say is, like, these two figures which are interacting, one is more humanistic in form, and the other is very much an abstracted human. Once again, I'm trying to separate the person that's being affected by the disease again, from the disease again. Mm-hmm. And then also, with the color shift, I'm trying to once again separate them, and they're interacting. The creature, the disease, is interacting with the figure or the person that is depressed. And what I'm trying to instill upon the viewer is that it's not who this person is, it is what this person is going through, or what this person is fighting against. And that's a very different thing than if I were to make artwork that didn't have this creature affecting the figure, or if I were to incorporate them both in one piece somehow, and which I do later. But, like, that's an important part of storytelling. That simple choice creates a drastically different narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you say that person, like, identifies as depression. So do you think that maybe there's a labeling issue? Because personally, for me, I have never really liked labels too much, and we as humans, I think, like to kind of label everything we possibly can and classify everything we can. And I think it's important that we do that, simply because, speech is so important, and trying to get understanding across from one person to another so that we can understand what exactly we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think there is maybe a problem there with a little bit of labeling. Similar to, I don't want to get, like, political in any way, but if somebody says, I'm with the right, or I feel more with the left, well, then you immediately have all these ideas of what exactly that means, but maybe to that person, they're like, well, that means something completely different to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's true. I agree with you 100%. That is the sort of, like, issue with labeling things, and the issue with thinking you understand something that you don't understand. So a lot of my work is, what I wanted to be really careful about my storytelling, or the concept, is I didn't want to speak from a place of ignorance, or a place where I didn't know.
So you got very depressed, so that you could...
Yeah, well, I did suffer depression, I'm open with that 100%. I won't lie, I'm seeing a therapist or a counselor right now to help me with my depression. And I don't think that's a big deal, but a lot of people have stigma around that, right? Because they don't understand it. They've never experienced it themselves. And that is a problem that we have. Like, you understand something based off of your experience with that thing. So some people hate dogs because a dog bit them when they were young, right?
Or it's barking during your recording.
Or it's
and
barking
you're
during...
really just getting pissed off.
Yeah, exactly. And that experience builds the shape of that word to you and the feeling of that word. So, like, one thing that I really wanted to be careful with when I was making my artwork was not speak from a place of ignorance and not make work about stuff that I didn't understand. And I think that's also important in artwork in general, and especially to storytelling, is to not lie to your viewer. Only speak. You don't have to have an answer. None of my work doesn't have an answer. It has a question. And I'm trying to challenge the idea of what is depression. So, especially when you're doing conceptual work and thinking about storytelling, don't force yourself to have everything resolved, because your job as an artist, I would say, is not to have everything resolved. That's a professionals in whatever field you're talking about job. You know, for me, like depression, it's therapists, or if I were to make work about cancer, it'd be a doctor. It's their job to solve the problem. My job as an artist is to get people to question the problem. What is the problem? How do we think about the problem? Why do we think that about the problem? What is the problem really at its core? All of these things are things that I want people to think critically on, and I make work about it that. So hopefully I can challenge their base thoughts that they have within themselves, and they can leave with a different perspective. Also, you have to think about the narrative you want to set. Do you want to have an extreme bias?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about some of this stuff, because for me, as a digital artist, as someone that has had work and done work in the past for production and predominantly focuses on that, my art is kind of in the other encampment where more so that's pretty much my only focus, and it's the only thing that I typically ever think about. So for me, story and all these things mean a slight little twist on it of most of my work is, you know, character work, and you're doing some characters for this project, but your idea is more overall encompassing all these. How many figures do you have? Is it just the two?
Well, there's two figures which are predominantly represented, but they come out in different sculptures. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 figures total, and they all are representative of the same thing, depression and the person battling it, right? But each one is a little bit different, and for specific reasons as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's you're working on an entire scene where pretty much all my work is only ever working on a singular character. The only thing that I can even like slightly hearken to that is doing work for museums and amusement parks in the past, where I would work on large-scale scenes of characters together. But at that time, you know, I would just receive schematics of exactly how the character was supposed to be laid. It was production work, you know?
Yeah,
I had zero say in anything. You know, I had a little say in some extent for getting some stuff ready to be animated. If it's something for an amusement park, maybe the character is animated or something like that.
Yeah,
but
there's nothing wrong with that type of work.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear your perspective on that.
And I think that perspective can be taken as, even if you're trying to just like make a character, and I shouldn't say just, because that's still, you know, a valid art form. But even if you're making a character, you can still have a sort of conceptual stuff in there, you know. Maybe your character had some traumatic event, or for whatever reason, you really want to like world build that character.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to just like throw in random stuff just because you think it might look cool, but really think about the person, really build up that person.
Yeah, you should always, I think, write even like a little paragraph, or at least think about a lot of this stuff before you even get started, if you're working on your, you know, own personal concept, that is.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, and that's what makes the strongest characters, I think, you know. Even like video game characters have deep backgrounds. I mean,
yes, even
look at World of Warcraft.
Ryu's stuffing a turkey. Ryu's
stuffing a turkey.
Ryu's got, you know, some backstory.
Yeah. I mean, like Street Fighter has a backstory. You know, why he's doing this stuff, and every bad guy and why they're dressed the way they're dressed and why they fight the way they fight. And
Isn't
their
M.
cultural
Bison
background.
like Russian or something?
Yeah, I think he's Russian.
Is he? I can't remember. I think he has like a sickle and hammer on his head or something. I can't.
Yeah, I think he like represents communism.
Yeah.
But like that's the thing is like even artists in video games think about that sort of thing. And if you don't believe me, look up your favorite video game and look up like the art design and the artist. If the artist talks about it, they will say why they did each thing that they did.
Yeah.
Because that's how you tell a good story. You have to have reasons. Otherwise, you're sort of just floating through space all randomly, and like just
And then your
always
character
a big
ends.
sword.
Yeah, your
'cause
character
I like
ends
those.
up like crap.
Yeah,
But-
exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, talking about this stuff, I can't remember if we talked about this previously, and we don't have to talk about it long. So just thinking about the role of a concept artist, that's a specific position at a company, at a typically for production work. So let's say film or game,
Yeah.
or even toy, or collectible or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But a concept artist is a specific position for a reason, and I think that's because it exists separate from the actual art of doing the actual thing, doing the art.
Mhm.
It's almost like a completely different art form that exists almost 100% mentally
Mhm.
outside of the actual art process.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in that sense, I would say you have to do things. This is from a traditional standpoint again. You have to do things because of the concept, and you relate information to the viewer because of the concept. So, for the figures that I'm making, they're not realistic. They're realistic, but they are not hyper realistic, and they're not proportionally accurate. So the eyes are realistic in the sense that they look good by themselves, and same with the nose and the mouth and the head and the ears. Everything looks good, but everything's a little bit wrong. And some people might see that and say, well, that's an error, right? Or like that's a mistake that you made in rendering a human being. But in actuality, I did that on purpose because I wanted to get across the idea of a slight disturbance, of like kind of like the uncanny valley. I kind of wanted to bring that in, so when you immediately look at that figure, you can say, well, it looks good in the sense that it's well made.
Yeah.
But it's something's a little bit off about it, and that's because once again of what my concept's dealing with. So like even in the creating of and shaping and everything that I'm doing is for a purpose to get across this idea that I'm trying to express.
It's interesting that you want to build that in even to the, just almost what I would call the first look impression. You know how you get your like first read and your second and third.
Yeah, that's
all that.
important because a lot of people today look at art for a total of like 6 seconds.
I wanted to ask you about that actually. I was gonna say, how does it make you feel that you've worked on this project for so very long, and you're going to present it at this exhibit, and someone's gonna walk right on past it and give it a peripheral glance?
Yeah, it's definitely sometimes disappointing, but I mean you can't catch everybody, and that's fine. If people really care about it, then I did my job right. And honestly, I'm not trying to talk to a vast majority of people. I am hoping that a vast majority of people can see it and understand it. But I'm specifically trying to talk to two groups of people: those who are suffering from depression and those who do not understand it and have never suffered from it. And those are the two people I'm trying to talk to. So if I can get those people in there and they can look at it, and that's great. And if somebody is like, I don't give a shit, well,
Yeah.
that's fine. That's fine. I get it. I mean, not everybody can be art people, but
It's an open gallery, right? People can kind
Come
of
and
pass through.
mhm. And I'm sure people will. I'm sure I will see plenty of people that night look at my work for a total of 5 seconds, and they'll turn around and be like, "Oh, that's fun," and then go on their way.
And I mean, I suffer from this as
Yeah, I was gonna
well.
say, yeah, even more so maybe because you have the
I
whole
think,
internet.
yeah, well, with the whole internet, God forbid someone looks at anything that you create for longer than 3 seconds. But by I'm guilty of this, I meant I do the exact same thing. I will look at someone's art for a total of 6 seconds and then go on to the next thing, because it is the whole wild internet out there, and there's a lot to look at. But I definitely have folders and folders and folders of images filled with stuff that just blows me away or inspires me, or I say, maybe I will find and or make time to create this thing in the future and render it into 3D. And then there's the rare occasion where I find something and I keep it open in one of my many, many tabs on my computer.
Yeah.
And I look at it for the next few days, and there's one piece that I've had open for a while now where I just kind of pop it open every once in a while, kind of throughout the day. I'm like, man, it's just so good. I love this, and I want to try to incorporate more of this into my work.
Yeah, and that's the nature of artwork. Yeah, I'm guilty of the same thing too. I'll go to a museum, and if I don't care for the artwork that much, it's really not standing out that much to me, and it might have an awesome message, but I'll just mosey on through. And everybody's guilty of that. Art professors are guilty of that. Artists are guilty of that. Regular people, obviously. It's really just what stands out to you. Like you said, though, I think the thing that separates an artist from a regular person is you do find those artists that you're just like drool over, and those like aesthetics that you just can't get over, and you just could sit in front of and look at for hours upon hours a day. And that's the thing, is just you collect your favorites. You're going to be drawn to certain things, and you're not going to be drawn to others. And when you're making artwork, I think it's important to remember that that some people, don't take it personally when someone's like, well, I'm just not into it. Well, of course not everybody's going to be into it. Some people aren't going to understand it. Some people just won't care for that aesthetic. I hate specific aesthetics that other people love, that very famous people do, and I can't stand them. That doesn't make that person less of an artist. It just means that they're less of an artist for me.
Okay, so here's one for you. Picasso, right? Picasso did the Bull. Are you familiar
Picasso
with
did the Bull, yeah.
Do you know the story of the Bull? Like, how it came to be? And I assume at least you have a vague idea because of your art history and such, but it started out as it was essentially a line of multiple renditions and simplifications of form to create the final artwork of the Bull. And it started out highly detailed, and I think he was taking some like tribal art language, kind of trying to work that in there. Mm-hmm. But it started out way more detailed, and then he just kept doing it over and over and over again until he just got this really simplified form that still looked tribal in nature, but also like a bull. And I think you can be guilty of looking at that for a few seconds and being like, oh, well, cool, I guess, on to the next thing. But I think the story of that definitely adds some value and interest to that.
Definitely. And you're talking about the bull painting, the painting you did with the like thick-lined bull.
Almost calligraphic.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a word. Calligraphy-esque.
That's interesting because I think actually there's a very high concept behind that work, if you can find it.
Here
we go. Oh, okay, never mind. Okay. I have seen that. Yeah. That's the crazy thing is that, but yeah, Picasso was an amazing renderer. He was an incredible renderer.
Yeah, he was an amazing artist, but all this stuff is so simple by the end of it. And maybe it's not really tribal, I guess, but just look up Picasso or The Bull by Picasso, and you'll see some really cool illustrations.
Yeah, and there's a reason he's doing that. Yeah, he is pulling from different conceptual ideas, aesthetic conceptual ideas, and he's using those to inform his artwork and inform how he represents this thing. And that's the thing, is that a lot of artists that have done abstracted or simplified or non-representational work, you'll find that they're amazing draftsmen or women, and are great at rendering objects, but they get bored with the thing that people have done for thousands of years, which is try to draw things accurately. So what they do is they come up with a new way of representing these different things. The Cubists took, I think Picasso was a Cubist, I might be wrong in that. The Cubists took things and they broke them down, and they drew from multiple perspectives and different angles.
The Minecrafters, yeah.
Yeah, the Minecrafters.
The Cubists.
Yeah, but you have tons of different artists that are really great in a traditional sense, and then they're like, okay, well, I'm done with that. Let's make artwork that's different, like Picasso, simplification and stuff like that, because I want to go for a different conceptual aesthetic or different
Trying to
reason.
do something new, right?
Yeah.
Trying to represent in a new way.
Yeah, exactly. And I hate some of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But I also respect that they are recognized and artists, and I respect their artwork. But it just doesn't do anything for me personally, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to attack them, and I don't think anybody has the right to attack me for what I personally enjoy and my personal aesthetics when it comes to artwork.
Yeah, I think it's everybody's got an opinion.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I do really enjoy Picasso's work though. I don't hate his work.
How about another question here?
Yeah.
All right, from Art Anonymous member. Well, I guess they don't really, it is anonymous, so.
Yeah, I guess I don't get a name.
So
AA member blank.
Right. From AA member number 128, what do you think about the 10K hour rule, or the 10,000 hour rule?
10,000 hours.
What are your ideas about that?
Should we elaborate on the idea?
Yeah, we can do that. But you had previously said that you think your ideas are going to be a lot different than mine, and I said I think we're going to be pretty close to the same page. But I guess we'll find out here. We haven't really talked about this, but the 10,000 hour rule is essentially you need roughly 10,000 hours to become considered an expert in a particular field, whether that's drawing or whether it's motorcycle racing, whatever
anything, literally any skill.
And that's the basic premise. Mm-hmm. So I can go ahead and say what I think about the 10K hour rule real quick before you get into it. Mm-hmm. I think it's bullshit to an extent. I think what the 10K hour rule exists as is it's a thing for people that don't understand what we talked about previously, which is the fundamental of time that you need to put into something to become competent in it. And the 10K hour rule is something for people that is measurable, and it's a lot of time. If you've done anything and measured it for a length of time, you can get pretty good at something in, let's say, 1,000 hours. And then you start to realize, wow, 10,000 hours, that's actually a lot. And then you start to calculate over days and weeks and months and project over a year, and you're like, well, I can only do that for, let's say, 8 hours a week, 40 hours a week. That's 480 hours a year, right? So roughly 52 weeks. Is that right? Did I do that math right? No, 40 hours a week. I'm sorry. Let's roll back. Cut that terrible math, Ben. 40 hours a week. So that's 160 hours a month, or roughly 1,600 a year, we'll say, for vacation and slacking and all that bullshit, because we know people don't do full 40 hours for the most part. But anyway, you start to realize that, hey, 10,000 hours, that's actually quite a bit of time, and you start to think about that, and you're like, well, 5 years, 6 years, maybe if I spend some time after work and do that extra work, I can get to that 10K hours quicker. But in reality, what you're going for is a goal that just exists as a far off skyscraper to look at, to kind of firmly plant your feet on the ground and say, I need to invest the time. Mm-hmm. So Daryl, what do you think about the 10K hour rule?
The 10,000 hour rule. I think the idea is super interesting, and I think the idea has some merit. But I agree, I can see your standpoint on the, especially on, the far-off skyscraper, so you're just trying to, figure out where you are in the progress. Sort of like labeling things, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Just trying to, get out of the unknown and concrete some reality for you. But I do think that there is and I don't know if it's 10,000 hours, but I do think there's a massive amount of time which needs to be incorporated into something before you can call yourself a master, just because of what it is. Everything seems simple on the outside, but as soon as you get into it, it gets more and more complex the more and more you learn about it. And
the more you realize, the less you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Eventually you realize, I really know nothing about... I'm a ceramicist, and I know a lot. I've been studying clay and working with clay for 4 years. I know nothing about screen emulsions and printing onto clay surfaces, which is the thing people do with ceramics, because I am simply not into printing graphics onto my clay. But some people are. That's something I don't think I'll ever learn how to do or ever know in depth how to do, and how to do it really well, simply because I'm not interested in it.
But then you have more time to work on what you are passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. But that's just what I was trying to say there is with that example is that with everything, there's a million other little things within subsections within the big category, and then there's little tiny subsections within those tiny subsections. And everything takes a lot of time to learn.
It's the iceberg, right?
Yeah.
It looks
looks
I
small.
want to be an artist.
Yeah.
What the is
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, exactly.
Under the water. I
Yeah.
had no idea.
And a lot of things, I think, as well, you can progress very fast. So I would say it's almost like a reverse exponential growth, in the sense that you start out learning really quickly because you had very little to no skill in this thing. So you start off with like no skill, and then you gain a lot of skill really fast, and over like, in a couple of years you make you make extraordinary progress. But over the next couple of years you make like half as much progress.
You feel like you almost hit a wall.
Yeah, exactly. You feel like you're plateauing, and I think that's because to learn the more nuanced things, you need to invest more time than you invested with like basic forms and basic shapes and basic lines and basic line weight, line density, like really simple things. And then you can be like, oh, just like the smallest addition of a little degree of a turn in this line completely changes the feel and the flow of this project. And like to see that, you have to master the first skills, and then you have to master the next skills after that, and then you have to master that skill, and just it's a addition effort where you always have to like work off of what you previously learned, and so your progress is slowed by having to master the thing previously. So I don't know if 10,000 hours is right, but I think that it's a good idea. I like that it's said, because I think it gives people a realistic expectation as to how long it will take to truly master a thing.
Like I said, it gives you an actual measurable thing, and it's a very, very big number. So when you start kind of thinking about it more and actually doing the thing, you start realizing, wow, that's a lot, actually. That's quite a bit. I mean, I play video games, and I know you are a gamer, at least to some extent. Not so much anymore for both of us, I'm sure, as we used to, just because, time spent on other things, other passions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to sacrifice for certain things. So when you start thinking about, I've spent, I played the new Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I played that game for 50 hours. It's like, could you imagine playing the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for 10,000 hours?
Yeah. That's true. But life is much more different than a video game.
It's much more complicated, but
skills.
What I was trying to relate that to is, holy crap, that's a big number, 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And another thing I want to comment on real quick is you were talking about kind of feeling... as you go on in your progression of learning art, let's say, you start to feel like it's harder to kind of go up that curve. And there's this really interesting graph that measures 3 different things, and it says what I think, it measures 3 things. It says what I think I'm learning, what I'm actually learning, and what I perceive myself learning. And it's talking about art, and it's like, or how I see myself progressing in my art is moving up, stagnating, moving up, stagnating, moving up. So a little bit of a stair step, and the last one is how I'm actually progressing in my art, and it flows between those two, and it's somewhere actually between there. And I think looking back on your old work can kind of give you some perspective in that. But yeah, like you said, I think a huge part of it as well is actually, as you learn more, it becomes more nuanced to kind of grow from there. Kind of like with your, as you get older, time seems to go by faster because it's a little bit exponential there. Well, I've only been alive for 20 years, let's say, so it seems like a year is a long time, but when you're 40, a year is maybe a lot less, just because of compared to the rest of your life.
Exactly, yeah. And that's actually a really good comparison.
I think what happens when you view that, how you view your own art, which your own art progression, let's say, is, moving up, then stagnating for a while. You're not actually stagnating. You're still growing during those points, even though it feels somewhat like a roller coaster ride of ups and downs. But like I said, I think looking back on your old art helps to kind of straighten that roller coaster a little bit to where it doesn't feel so much like, oh wow, I just can't get over this hump.
Yeah, definitely. And you saying that reminded me, the one thing that I don't like about the 10,000 hour rule is he just sort of is like, here, work 10,000 hours and then you'll be really good. And the problem with that is that, like, no, you have to actually still be learning. You can't work for 10,000 hours and make the same thing, like, let's say you make a figure every day, you sculpt a figure every day. and you sculpt a figure every day, and eventually you have 10,000 hours of sculpting the same figure every day. You just replicate it every day. Well, then you're really good at making that one figure, but you're not an expert in sculpting. You're an expert in sculpting this very specific one figure. To really learn how to be an expert, you have to go and diversify your skill sets. You have to learn about all the other sorts of things that come into, specifically about art making. But like, you're talking about, applies to any job, but when it goes to art making, it's like, for me, a traditional artist, I have to learn about concept, and I have to learn about form, and I have to learn about glazes, and I have to learn about clay formulations and glaze formulations and temperature ranges,
and
all of these things.
conceptualization, which is completely separate from the actual thing.
Yeah, I can't just go there, make the same thing every day and expect to be amazing one day. That's just not the case. That's my biggest thing with that. And he might have even addressed it, I don't know. But the thing is that you actually have to be actively learning and not just stagnating and like, oh, I'm just going to do the same thing. We have this conversation of like, as soon as you decide, I'm good enough, I can just keep making this type of work forever, like, that's the stagnation point. And you can't do that. You're not learning anymore.
Yeah, practice doesn't make perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect practice makes perfect. But we can't do perfect practice, so let's try to do as good or as close as we can. I want to try to define a couple things here. So in that 10K hour rule, there's this idea of the different levels of mastery in art, and I want to see what you think about them. So at the very bottom is student, and a student has knowledge of the thing. Mm-hmm. And then there's amateur, and the amateur does it for fun. It's like a hobby. And then above that is a professional, and the professional does it for work. They get paid to do that thing. Above that is an expert, and an expert is considered someone who's put in the 10,000 hours or more, or they would call themselves an expert. And then above that is a master, and a master is someone who creates new ways of doing that thing.
Okay. I think I would agree with the basic outline of that, but I think it's a gross oversimplification. Because sometimes you could be a student and a professional at the same time. Right? So I'm sure there's plenty of students out there, myself included. I just had a sale the other day, I sold some work. So then I would be considered a professional in that sense.
Yeah, maybe not. I think it's not saying like student in the traditional sense of you're going to school for it, but student in the sense of that the thing exists.
Oh, okay. Okay, well then never mind. In that sense, I agree with those basic foundations. I mean, that is the thing. You can be an expert. I really like the distinction between expert and master. The distinction between someone who is very, very well versed in this thing, and then the next level of someone who has
transformed
the
tried
thing,
to do it in a new way.
Yeah, like not necessarily revolutionized, but like I forget the word I'm trying to think of. But anyway.
That's actually the one that I struggle the most with, because what it claims a master is someone that's doing the art form in a new way. I feel like honestly you could be at any level and start to do that. I think as people come up this line of growth and learning, we're kind of passing on knowledge from all the people that have come before you, and you start to fall in line with those people. But like you said, with having your conceptualization driving your art, maybe you do something in a completely new way simply because you've been off on your own and haven't had the work of other people kind of guiding you forward into almost a funnel of ideas about how you do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the issue with that is that you're always influenced by your previous exposure to other artists. And I think it is important for artists, and you do this all the time as well, but as artists to really research what's happening. Art doesn't happen in a bubble or in a vacuum. There's art going on all the time, so it's really important to keep up to date with what's going on and things like that. So the artwork that I'm creating, like right now, it is a very traditional style of artwork, and even the conceptual ideas is a very traditional way of trying to express those ideas. You can go back to Greek sculpture, Hellenistic era sculpture, and that's actually where I draw my influences from. That's actually what I wasn't trying to imitate, but I was actually I really like the way that the Hellenistic era tells stories, and I am trying to tell a story, tell a narrative, and I think it's actually the strongest era in which narratives are told conceptually through artwork. So I didn't base it off of consciously, I don't even think subconsciously, but I definitely was like, oh, like I like that thing. I'm gonna not try to replicate it, but I'm gonna use that as a starting base line sort of thing, to have like the realistic sculptures and the way that they come off the wall and interact with the space and stuff like that. You know, that's all very Hellenistic. And I think masters, I think the thing that I really appreciate about that is that while yes, you're right, you can start to do things differently than other people, but I think until you really understand something and know all of the ways it's already been done, sometimes you might get lucky without understanding all the ways it's already been done and do something completely new. But more than likely, someone's already done something that you've done, that you did, and you think it's original, but really it's just like some guy 3,000 years ago did that thing.
Right.
So once you know all the ways that these things have been represented, well, then you can like, oh, well, I will represent it in a brand new way.
I think I like that idea as well. Thinking about such artists as like Don Bluth, who started a revolution in style, and even more recent, you can think about just anime culture and how much that has influenced art that I see online on ArtStation and stuff like that. There's so many artists that, you know, it's not quite anime, but it's like their own little take on that. And there's artists like Mark Brunet who kind of has his own version of anime that a lot of people have adopted his style, and he kind of used to work at Blizzard, and he went off on his own and he's focused on other stuff now. But yeah, I think a lot of these people are past that level of expertise for sure, to where they're kind of trying to pave their own road and have their own, I don't want to say art form, but new styles.
Yeah, they're innovating. Yeah, that's what I was trying to look for earlier. They're trying to innovate what, you know, their art practice is. And that's the reason that, like, when you're in art history class, that's the reason you learn about Picasso or Duchamp or, I mentioned him earlier this episode. He did the Marilyn Monroe prints.
Andy Warhol?
Andy Warhol. Yeah, that's the reason those people are all famous. Not necessarily because their art is so amazing, but because these people represented art in a way that the world had never seen before. And that's why you learn about them. Those people will always be considered masters. Picasso, with his impasto brushstrokes, is very heavy paint application, is very emotional, you know, line work. His style of painting had never been seen before. And when he died, nobody cared about his artwork. And even his friend was quoted saying, his friend actually hoarded his work and didn't show the world, and he was quoted saying, the world's not ready to see Picasso's work. The world just isn't prepared to see what he does. And, you know, he was right, because no one else had represented paintings in the way that he did. And it's not necessarily because he's the best. You know, you might not like Picasso's aesthetic, but it's because he invented it that he will always be celebrated. And that's what a master is, someone that is inventing, changing the game, changing how people can play the game. I think that's the difference between a master and an expert, right? The expert never innovates, they're just really good at doing it. But the master says, here's this new way that you can now do this way. And the expert could pick that up and learn how to do it really well and emulate it. I think a lot of people could become experts. I think a lot of people could become professionals. A smaller minority of that could become experts, but a very, very small percentile would become masters in the sense and the definition that you provided.
Yeah, I think my throat's dying.
I think my throat's dying.
Yeah, I think anybody can really become an expert given enough time, almost.
Yeah,
I think you still have to have passion and everything in there, but I think the scope really narrows when you start talking about these people that have taken it that next step further and kind of invented their own style or their own way of doing things, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I actually haven't thought about that before, like right now. I mean, I've definitely thought about it, but I never put it in those words exactly, which is really interesting. And I mean, you can apply that same line of thinking to science, math, you know. Who do we celebrate in science all the time? Albert Einstein. Why? Because he pushed it a next step. And that's the next step in logical thinking, but as a creative expressionist thinking, you know, I think you truly do need like a special, that is something that you can't just learn how to do. You can't learn how to create something new. You just have to be able to create something new. just simply because that's a skill that cannot be gained. You can't practice making something new, right? You can only make something new.
I don't know.
I mean, maybe. I guess you can.
Concept artists kind of do it in a way.
That's
I mean,
true.
they pull from
Storytelling.
They pull from so many different things, and I think that's really what that creating of something new is. It's pulling all of your your past experiences and who you are and what you love and all these things into finally creating that new thing that almost represents you in a way.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's definitely becoming more common, I think, with the artists that you were saying, how they like sort of pulled from these different regions of artwork and then sort of made this new style. I definitely see that a lot more of like specific stylistic approaches and specific work that you can tell just by looking at it. Oh, that's blah blah blah, because I can just tell because he does his eyes a specific way that no one really else does them that way, or maybe because how he poses his figures is always.
There's a ton of artists I follow online that I can just see the work and I'm like, oh, yep, that's them. I know immediately who it is. Yeah.
You can look at a surrealist painting and be like, oh, I know that's surrealist, right? The style is surrealistic. So that is really interesting, and I think that goes back to concept and original, what we were talking about originally. That is more of, I would say, an aesthetic concept. So like with my pottery, a lot of people in my studio know my pottery just by looking at it. They know, like, they don't have to ask whose it is.
Pretty cool.
I don't sign it. I don't put my name on it. But like if they were
got the penis next
exactly.
to it on the table,
so
everybody knows.
So everybody knows, yeah. No.
This is Daryl's.
This is Daryl's. His penises. No, but like they'll pull my vase out of a kiln, and then my professor even would be like, "Oh, like I know this is yours. Like this is I can." He really enjoys my pottery, but he'd be like, "Oh, I can just tell your forms just by looking at them," and that is, I think that's a really good mile marker in your progression on the way to being like a very strong artist, is when you can develop this personal concept or this personal aesthetic representation that is unique to you, and it's so unique to you that the people around you
immediately recognize.
Yeah, immediately can look at it and be like, oh, that's yours.
I think that's really interesting that you say that, because there's almost two encampments of that where people ask, oh, should I have my own style? And this is maybe the digital artist versus a traditional artist's work that we were talking about previously, where I was saying where it seems like a lot of digital artists do a lot of work more for production. It seems like in that group, at least, a lot of people want to be as neutral as possible in their style.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting seeing all these people online kind of going back and forth on this idea, because the people who don't want to have any particular style, they feel like they can be a little more marketable. So if you're starting out and you're trying to find your first job, let's say in the industry, a lot of people think, well, if I'm less specific, then I can kind of apply to a lot more places. But it seems like, to me personally, just from my experience, the people that have their own personal aesthetic and style, the ones that you can look at and immediately say, that's that person. Those are the people that don't even have to look for work. Those are the people that get emails every week and asking them to work on their project.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think if you are purposefully, I think one thing that when you're growing as an artist and you say, well, should I go for a style or should I go for this unique thing?
That's the wrong question.
That's the wrong question. The style will develop with the time that you put into it. How you make things will progress, and they'll become more individualistic to your style, your sense. The better and better you get, and the more you understand your own aesthetic preferences, and the more you understand your own aesthetic, like what you want out of your work, and that comes with time and being able to see.
That doesn't mean you can't break out of that style.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people, I think that's maybe some underlying fear that a lot of people have.
Yeah,
where they're like, oh, it's my
thing.
style, so I now have to stick to it for the rest of forever. And it's no, just keep creating art, and the style will find you in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Where all of a sudden you look back over your last 10 pieces and you're like, maybe I am starting to kind of fall into not not necessarily a box, but a particular style and aesthetic.
Yeah, it'll naturally evolve. And if you're afraid that you'll get stuck in it, like, I wouldn't ever worry about that. The work that I'm making right now that I talked about, I am not going to continue making that work. I made a work based on something that I wanted to talk about, and I've been thinking about it and talking about it to myself and others for like
so long
6 months, 7 months.
You're ready.
Yeah, I'm done.
You're
I'm
ready
done.
to
I'm
move
not.
on.
Yeah, you will never see another. Maybe not never, but
Not for a very long time.
not for
Yeah,
at
I
least
totally understand
years.
that feeling.
You'll never see another exhibition from me being about the same subject, and at least within probably 5 years to a decade. And that's just that's something you'll see. So don't worry about getting stuck, because I think your attention will be drawn forward, or your aesthetic and what you want to talk about and what you want to communicate and the stories you want to tell. It'll be drawn from what you're focused on now. As soon as you are ready and you have mastered that or have dealt with that to your satisfaction. So once this exhibition's done, I am personally satisfied with the work I made, and I'm already thinking about other stuff that I want to make and other ways I want to represent that work.
The next 10 projects.
Yeah, exactly. And the next, and previously, I've never made figurative work previously to this. Never in this sense. So, I made a lot of animal work and a lot of work that was representational of...
Then you realized how much it sucks making anything resembling the human form,
Yeah,
especially
I
for
did.
your first project. That's tough, man, for what you did. That sounds like a lot of work. You said roughly 7 figures. I don't know if they're full figures for all of them.
Oh, no, not at all.
But right, yeah. But either way, that's still a crap ton of work. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited to go check it out.
Yeah, man, I am not excited.
Yeah.
I'm very nervous.
Yeah, I can understand
After
that.
the talk, I'll be done. I'll be good. I'll be excited for
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? But I mean, that's just the nature of life, Everybody's going to be nervous before their talk, before your public outing sort of thing. Afterwards, I'll be...
It'll go great, dude.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see it.
Thanks, man.
All right. Well, I think that's about time, so let's wrap up here with some artists to check out.
Oh, yeah.
I'll go ahead and go first because I got one that I've been thinking about. And I'm giving this particular person as someone to check out because I realized that I haven't actually told anybody to check out a digital sculptor yet.
Really?
The last artist I said to check out was a digital painter, and I can't remember who I said the time before that to check out. But either way, I'm going to tell you guys to check out this digital sculptor. His name's Marco Plauf. I'm sure a lot of you will recognize that name. And for some of you that aren't recognizing that name, definitely go check out this dude's work. He is one of the best digital sculptors around right now. He is the top of the bar. He is one of the few that I would say are kind of setting the bar right now for other people to kind of aim towards. So if you're looking for someone to see who is some of the best, go check out Marco Plauf's work.
Yeah. Sounds awesome. I'll have to look him up after this. I would suggest Anna England. Anna England is Professor Emeritus.
I don't know what that means.
She's a professor who's retired from it, from working. She used to be my professor when I started exploring ceramics. She has a show right now, actually, at the Cincinnati Art Museum called Kinship.
I wanted to ask you earlier while we were talking about the Cincinnati Art Museum, but I didn't want to interrupt you. I'll wait till you're done here.
Okay, yeah. She has a show going on right now. It's called Kinship. And if you're around the area, you definitely go see it. But you can definitely still look it up online. She's an amazing
Sculptural?
artist. All sculptural work, yeah. Primarily ceramic work, but she also has some resin and some wood stuff too. Just incorporated in.
Sounds really cool.
Dude, it's super awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you if you've ever been to the Cincinnati Art Museum, which it sounds like you probably have.
Mm-hmm.
The Cincinnati Art Museum has some of the most amazing Greco-Roman sculptures I've just ever seen in person. And I'm actually going to Italy in a couple of weeks. I don't know if I told you that.
No, I don't think
well,
so.
hey, I'm going to Italy.
Oh, yeah, sweet, awesome. It's bailing on me,
And
guys.
I'm going to be passing through Florence. I'm going to go check out the Statue of David, which I'm super pumped for. But yeah, the Cincinnati Art Museum, there's some really cool sculptures in there. And man, last time I went there, I was just taking a crap ton of pictures.
Yeah.
Probably people thought I was a freak. But yeah, I was taking so many pictures of all these awesome sculptures.
Yeah, all those made out of stone or marble. And
Yeah, that just it blows
those
me away
people,
when I
yeah,
see it.
That's insanity. That's just
Could you imagine
insane.
doing that today?
no.
I can't.
But I think it's kind of unfair because in today's society and life, we have so many things to do. Back then, all they did was do that.
Either
you know what
carve
I mean?
rocks or eat them.
Yeah, it was like we're gonna eat and sleep and carve rocks. That's all I do for my life, you know. And now
Maybe
it's
not
so-
quite that simple.
Not quite
but-
so simple, but like
no, I
you
agree.
see what I'm saying?
I
Like,
agree.
yeah, there was no like loans and debt, and no business, Brad. You know.
No business, Brad. Speaking of which, I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Yeah, end where we started off.
Yeah, I think that's a good AA meeting there.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we need like a little send off saying when we go here, something like "May the spirit of Art Anonymous be with you."
Yeah, right?
something
similar.
like that.
Yeah.
We need like a little AA prayer of something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
May business Brad forever be
Forever just
forever be distant
behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll figure it
We'll
out.
figure it out,
later.
and we'll edit it in, or not. We'll figure it out.
All right. Well, until next time, we'll see you guys.
See you guys.
Arden, I love business Brad.
Art Anonymous. Yeah.
Business Brad.
Hey there, this is Business Brad. Art Anonymous is a podcast which talks about all things art, as well as answering some community questions sent in along the way. Art Anonymous is supported by the two artists that you heard today. If you would like to leave a question or a comment, please do so below. And if you enjoyed what you heard today, please subscribe and leave a like. I have to go file some reports now. Thank you for listening to Art Anonymous.